Hey guys, welcome back. So, for the past few weeks, obviously, we've been concentrating on some cold cases, UK cold cases. Tonight is going to be no different. Even though this case is now solved, it ended with a conviction around 10 years ago. For 21 years, it was actually a quite infamous cold case. The reason I chose this one is where I'm currently living at the moment. It is only a bus ride from actually where this happened. So if you guys watched my Stuart Harlan video, because I grew up in the area where that case happened, I went and filmed around that area. So I've done a little bit today with Claire's murder. So yeah, obviously, we're going to be talking about Claire Tiltman. Just a little side note as well, got some really exciting stuff going on personally. So it may be one of the last videos for the next couple of weeks that I'm going to be posting, so I'm going to be taking another short break. Once everything's all settled down, obviously I'll get back onto it because I am really enjoying this. I'm loving the support that you guys are giving me. So please like, share and subscribe if you can. If you haven't subscribed, hit that notification bell, hit the subscribe button. As already stated, I will never ask you guys for money, but a subscription is always free and it's always appreciated. So thank you so much for your support. So with all that said and done, I'm just going to get into the story of Claire Tiltman. So who was Claire? So Claire Tiltman, she was born on the 14th of January 1977 to parents Cliff and Linda Tiltman, and she grew up as their only child. And Claire lived with her parents in a parish, and so she was brought up very, very religious. She was described as unique and someone who kind of drew people to her. And she was said to have been really funny, really ambitious. She had an amazing sense of humour, and many of her friends referred to her to the nickname Tilt. In her secondary school years, Claire was a student at Dartford Grammar School for Girls, and just days before her murder, Claire had just finished a bronze level in her Duke of Edinburgh award, and this was her working at her local fire station. So Claire had aspirations to be a firefighter after she left school. And this brings us today to obviously what we're going to be discussing. So on the 18th of January 1993, so this is just 4 days after Claire's 16th birthday, Claire actually left school and she started making her way over to see her friend. And the reason for this was that she and her friend were meant to be discussing what GCSEs they were actually going to take, and to discuss their exam results. And on the way to her friends, she stops off at a local offie and she purchases some cigarettes. So that's when she makes it to Green Hive, and while I'm going to post the footage I took today, so at Green Hive there's a massive roundabout, and on next to that roundabout, there is St Mary's Church, and then in front of that is a massive white building. I believe it may have been a pub at one point. It's what it certainly looks like, but it's now a McDonald's. And right opposite there is a little alleyway. So I'm just going to pause here, I'm just going to post the footage I took today. It's only about 3 minutes long, because there wasn't really a wonderful lot, and obviously a way to discuss it to you guys like this. So just going to pause here for a moment at the footage. Hey guys, so before I bring you to the scene, so this is the alleyway that Claire would have been walking down on the 18th of January 1993. And then just down here, so she would have been walking up this way to the housing estate. to come visit her friend. And some point down here is when Colin obviously attacked her and stabbed her. And she's turned back and staggered back down here. And I came in today because I don't live far from this site. So if you watched the Stuart Harlan film that I did very similar. And she would have stopped at this crossing here. It's where she collapsed and she was found by motorists. And I'm led to believe there is a little memorial for her somewhere around here. So I'm just got to find that. And then I can add that in as well. So I'll be back once I find the memorial. But this is the site, so it's Green Heath roundabout. You've got the McDonald's, it's just here. And just over back here is St Mary's Church. So I'm just going to have a little nose about, see if I can find the memorial. Okay, so this is the memorial, this is dedicated to Claire. And also named is Owen Taylor. So he was the superintendent, or detective superintendent of Kent County Constabulary. That obviously you can see from there. So obviously he was one of the ones that led the investigation originally, and I believe he was like a bloodhound really. He didn't stop trying to get answers to Claire's untimely death, and by the looks of it I believe he also passed away at some point before the case was solved. But I'm just glad to see that obviously the memorial is still there. Fortunately, obviously, like I said, I tried to find one in regards of Cheryl, if you watch the Stuart Harlan video, but it looked like there was either not one put in place or it had been removed. So I'm kind of glad that they haven't disrespected Claire's memory by removing this. But like I said, I just wanted to bring you guys to the site. Just make it, obviously it's real, but I want to make it as real as possible and as detailed as possible for you. So thanks for watching. So as Claire is walking down that alleyway, she's grabbed and attacked in an unprovoked manner. And she was then unfortunately stabbed 49 times. Like complete overkill. I couldn't find any sort of description of how severe the injuries were, but 49 times is complete overkill. We all know that. We all watch these type of films, these type of documentaries, and you know, we know that it doesn't take 49 times to stab someone to kill them. It just absolutely beggars belief how someone could be that sadistic. So she actually manages to initially survive this and staggers her way out of the alleyway. She makes it to the crossing, as you saw in the footage I took at the site, and this is where she collapsed, so very close to the McDonald's. So she was aided by paramedics, by passers-by who called paramedics, and Claire Slaley, sadly, she died from her injuries not long after. And despite over 1,500 statements from multiple witnesses, it genuinely took the police 21 years to solve her murder, as I said at the beginning of this video. And this man was already on the police's radar. He was actually already in prison serving time for a couple of other attacks that we're going to get onto later. And this was in a very similar manner, but luckily this woman, she managed to survive and she got her justice in the end. So we're just going to stop here for a second to stop talking about Claire, and we're going to look at the man who was actually responsible, and his name was Colin Ash Smith. and he was born sometime in 1968. And he was actually born in nearby Swanscombe to parents Aubrey and Diane. And both Aubrey and Diane were actually Labour Party councillors, and Diane was said to have later run as the mayor of her town. In 1993, Colin, he was now 24, and he worked as a milkman, and he still lived at home with his parents. He was actually in a relationship at the time with a woman named Stella Murrell, and Colin was described as a loner with a keen interest in Superman, Star Trek, and Jack the Ripper. So complete different sort of interests. I'm not pointing that out to take the mick. You know, obviously people who watch Star Trek, who watch Superman, who like Marvel and DC and all that, they're harmless enough. I'm not taking the mick out of that. I've got really close friends who are interested in those kind of things. But all I'm just saying is, obviously, it's a complete dystopian world where you have those sort of sci-fi things, but then you have an obsession with Jack the Ripper. So Colin reportedly referred to himself as an animal, and he was actually plagued really badly with hatred of women, and he felt that some women just did him the dirty, and this would make him go into a rage, and he would want to seek revenge on these women, even though they probably completely harmless. They've got the absolute right to turn him down if they wish. We all have that right, but he didn't see it that way. You know, he saw himself as someone who was possibly really important, and that, you know, women should sort of fall at his feet, be grateful that he's paying them attention. He said to himself that he would frequently go on midnight walks armed with knives and various other weapons. And he even kept a diary to describe any attacks that he performed on women, and he would then give himself a percentage on how successful and sadistic these attacks were. So his first recorded attack was on a woman, came in 1988. So he was around 20 years old at the time. Which Colin himself, he described as his masterpiece. So he attacked a unnamed woman by gunpoint and took her into a local quarry. He then gagged her. He photographed her in sexual poses before attempting to strangle her and then stabbing her. But luckily, she managed to survive this ordeal. It was his next recorded attack was on Claire, so this was 5 years later in 1993. But I strongly believe that, obviously, what I just described there, he wouldn't have stopped in those 5 years. I believe there were probably other attacks. It's just maybe those victims were too scared to come forward, and they're probably still too scared to come forward. I could be wrong, and I hope I am wrong. But that's a strong belief that I've got. I don't believe that he's just going to wait around for 5 years. So after, obviously, Claire's murder, he was actually initially arrested on suspicion for it. He was questioned after many witnesses witnessed him, and they said that he was wearing a cream-coloured parka coat, and he actually even wore this jacket to attend Claire's funeral in February of 1993. So you're thinking, obviously, how he would have known. Well, it's been said that Colin and Claire, they actually were aware of each other. They knew each other quite well. Both the families attended a local British Legion club, which are kind of like mini bars and that, for like functions. quite a well-known one in Hornchurch Town Centre, if you're local to Essex. I don't know if it still runs these days, but I remember going there when I was a kid. So February 1993, to pose as a mourner, he attends Claire's funeral, and many people saw this, and this cream jacket that he was wearing was the one that he was wearing on the day that he murdered Claire. So despite being initially questioned for Claire's murder, Colin was actually then released later on due to lack of evidence. And Diane had actually, so his mother, she actually came forward to give her son an alibi. And she said that Colin was actually driving her home at the time of Claire's murder. So in 1995, he then attacked a 22-year-old girl called Charlotte Bernard. He dragged her into a disused building and stabbed her 14 times. But Charlotte, again, she luckily survived this ordeal, and she was one of the brave ones that actually came forward. So it was then proven that Colin had set up false alibis, and eventually and thankfully, police, they were managed to gather enough evidence to charge Colin with Charlotte's attack, and eventually they were able to link him to the attack in 1988. So he's then sentenced to a life sentence in December 1996, and while serving his time, he's still in a relationship with Stella that I mentioned earlier, and Diane, like his mother, she actually convinced Stella to marry Colin while he was serving his time. Thankfully, Stella came to her senses a few years later and she divorced him. And Diane actually spoke out in 1997, stating that she, her husband Aubrey, and her son, they were all innocent. No one in her family, in their immediate family, was guilty of the murder of Claire. But that same exact year, Aubrey, so Colin's father, he too was imprisoned. So he was sentenced to 12 months for perverting the course of justice after admitting that he had destroyed a knife that had potential evidence on it. And he reportedly got notice that his house was due to be searched by the officers. So he went and boiled the knife until obviously the plastic handle melted, and he was able to discard and dispose of it. So Aubrey later died in May 2016, so while Colin was serving his next sentence for Claire's murder, which we're going to get to in a bit. And Colin was denied licence to attend the funeral due to a public outcry on social media. Claire's parents campaigned regularly to the public in the hopes that this would lead to a conviction. So they were adamant that Colin was actually responsible. But sadly, both of them ended up passing away before they could see conviction actually coming true. So Lynn, so Claire's mum, she passed away in March of 2008, and Cliff in September 2012. Both of them sadly been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And Roger Tiltman, so Cliff's brother, said that during his impact statement that Cliff and Lynn were racked with guilt over Claire's killing and the fact that they actually let her go out that night. This caused them a massive amount of pain, and the stress of Claire's unsolved murder, it drove them to an early grave in his opinion. So what actually caused Colin to be finally convicted? So Colin's conviction was finally made while he was serving time in Wakefield. So Colin actually confided in another prisoner named Stephen Moliere. So Stephen was actually going by the name Stephen Dubois, and Colin mentioned about an attack he performed on a girl in the early 90s. He attacked her at Zebra Crossing, how he snapped and stabbed her multiple times. And ironically enough, Colin was actually due for release on parole in 2014, after serving obviously 18 years of his life sentence. Now Stefan, he comes forward with this new information, and obviously grassing never really goes down well in prisons, we all know that, but we also know that men who harm women and men who harm children especially, they are seen as the lowest of the low in prisons. So Stefan obviously put aside his beliefs in grassing, and he wanted to seek justice for a 16-year-old girl. So what I gather is that he then goes to the governor. The governor rings the police. Police come in and they finally seek enough evidence to have this case closed and get justice for Claire's family. So Colin was arrested for Claire's murder, with a trial beginning in late 2014. Colin, at the time, he was 46 years old, and he was then found guilty and sentenced to another life sentence with a minimum of 21 years. In my opinion, not long enough. Sorry, but to stab someone to death, especially after stabbing them 49 times, and getting away with it for 21 years himself, I'm sorry, but he should not have any sort of chance at any further parole. It's proven that he is a danger to society. I don't know how any juror can really see that, but with the UK justice system the way it is, obviously we all know that the UK justice system is really lenient because they believe in retribution, they believe in what they consider a fair trial, they believe in rehabilitation. So the 5-week trial was attended by Claire's school friends and her remaining family, and before passing down the sentence, Lord Justice Sweeney said, "The only sentence I can impose upon a conviction for murder is one of life imprisonment. However, it is also incumbent upon me to form a view as to the length of any minimum term." So he then commented to the jury, calling the case demanding and appalling. And prosecutor Brian Tiltman, which is a name I actually recognise, I think he's cropped up a few times in past cases I've talked about. He commented that Colin got a warped pleasure from killing Claire in a savage and motiveless attack, and added that her assailant stabbed her no less than 49 times in what can only be described as a frenzied and remorseless attack by someone having nothing less than the intention of killing her. Make no mistake, this was a killing for the sake of killing, carried out by the ruthless and predatory armed killer who attacked his victim rapidly and stealthily, allowing her no time for defence or escape. He then fled the scene just as efficiently as he had arrived. Now, despite all of this evidence against him, Colin's lawyers said that Claire's killer, surprise surprise, was Robert Napper. So that's another name that's been cropping up for the past couple of weeks on these videos. So because of obviously the savage brutality of murder on Rachel Nichol in 1992, and the quick time frame of most of the cold cases, I think bar one, but most of the cold cases I've been doing for the past few weeks have all mentioned Robert Napper's name. But obviously the evidence against Colin was too substantial, and the fact that he gave some form of admission while he was serving his original sentence still. So he was later then sent to HMP Durham to begin his 21-year sentence. Now, After a number of years and a number of delays, mainly due to the pandemic, a youth centre was actually opened up in excuse me. It was opened up in Dartford, and this youth centre was named after Claire. So it was called the Claire Tiltman Centre, and this was built in Claire's memory. I did try and find this little centre. I couldn't actually find it. Google Maps, surprisingly, wasn't really helpful to me today. I would love to have gone and showed you guys, but I will insert a little picture here of the centre. So this was built in, like I said, in Claire's memory, named after her, and it's still going strong today. So it just aims to give youths, like teenagers, children, a safe place to learn, things like brownies and stuff like that. In November 2015, only 1 year into his new sentence, Colin actually had the audacity, the nerve to lodge an appeal. And his appeal was on the grounds that Mr. Justice Sweeney had wrongfully allowed grave prejudice to go before the jury. The appeal, thankfully, I couldn't really find much that was written about the appeal. I couldn't really find much that was actually written about the original court case. The appeal, however, thankfully, it was rejected by Lord Justice Davis and 2 other Lord Justice of Appeals, with Justice Davis in particular stating that the case was unarguable, like there was no case to argue. And Dartford MP Gareth Johnson, he actually attended this trial, and he said that, "I'm convinced that Colin Ash Smith is an odious man who should never be released from prison. I have nothing but contempt for this individual who has been convicted of 2 savage attacks on local women before his conviction of murdering Claire Tiltman. I remember how shocked the local community was when this crime was committed, and the devastation it inflicted on Claire's family and friends. Greenhithe is a safer place with Colin Ash Smith behind bars." So I do apologise, obviously, that it's only a shorter one today. Again, as obviously I discussed earlier in the video, I've got a few things coming up, really exciting time for me in the next couple of weeks. So there may be a slight pause on the channel, but I will be back. Obviously, as always, I would like to have gone further with this story, give Claire the justice that she deserves, make sure that everyone remembers, but like I said, there's just limited sources available, and the sources I could find, which is all giving me the same sort of information, just different wording, so I could only discuss what I can genuinely actually find. So, as always, just a massive thank you to everyone who has joined tonight. I will be back in a few weeks' time, like I said. Until then, please guys, stay safe, and I will see you very soon. And obviously I will upload a video and just discuss about the exciting opportunities that I've got coming my way soon. Take care. See you soon.